Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now a few episodes ago we were looking at some shoot 'em ups. The early ones I played on the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, through the Commodore Amiga and onto more modern ones. The game you're looking at here is Darius Burst Chronicle Saviors, and it's an update of the arcade game that was released way back in 2010. One of the standout features of that arcade was it was played across two screens, and if you have those two screens you can get as close as possible to the feel of the arcade without spending £30,000. I've been having a bit of fun with this game lately. I'm not that good at it at the moment, I need to get a lot better. But today we're looking at a very specific type of shooter, the absolute toughest ones out there. These are the Danmaku games, the bullet hell shooters. You might have played some old shoot 'em ups where you're dodging 10 bullets at a time. In games like this you could be dodging hundreds of bullets at a time. It's all about pattern recognition, and not letting these bullet attacks get you forced into a corner and losing your life. If you've seen these games before and you've been put off by the difficulty or apparent difficulty of them, I'm here to tell you why you should give them another chance. We're going to take a look at some of the games that I recommend, the ones I started out with, my favourites, as well as take on a new challenge. Mushihimesama, or Bug Princess as it's known in Japan, was released in the arcades back in 2004. Originally an arcade release only, it did eventually get released on the Xbox 360, but only in Japan, and what a mistake that was. You can buy the Japanese version as I have, but it will not play on a UK Xbox 360, Xbox One or Xbox Series X. But I love this game so much that I had to import a copy. It is the game that turned me on to these types of shooters, and it is my favourite arcade shoot 'em up of all time. Thankfully you can download this game digitally now, and there are some modern re-releases of it as well. But enough waffle, let's take a look at the game and see what these games are all about. This is probably a good example. The game starts out fairly straightforward and only goes up in difficulty from there. You can play through the game on normal original difficulty and it's just like any other shooter, well with a few more bullets. And once you conquer original mode you'll want to increase the difficulty, make the game a bit harder, give yourself a new challenge and reach new high scores. One thing pretty much all of these bullet hell shooters have in common is a really small hitbox on your character. Although your character or ship might actually appear quite large in this game, it's actually only the very centre of it that's your hitbox. As long as this globe never actually touches the centre of a bullet, you're actually okay. And that's actually by design, because you'll never get this amount of bullets on screen and be able to dodge them whilst you're controlling a large ship. And you'll absolutely need to know the size of that hitbox and what you can get away with in this game. There's 5 stages and bosses to get through in this game, but it really is the levels themselves that you've got to memorise. On some of the skill levels you can basically just play straight through, but on the toughest levels you are going to have to learn this stuff. And it is that takes the time, but once you nail it, once you learn these patterns, you'll be absolutely loving this game. There is quite a complex scoring mechanism to this game if you are chasing a high score. Me, I'm just trying to get through the game. But as well as taking enemies down, there is also bullet cancels. Some of the enemies you destroy are going to take out all the bullets on the screen and turn them into high score items that you can pick up. And it's learning how to maximise that's going to boost your high score. If you take out these enemies when there's a maximum number of bullets on the screen, that's going to give you the highest score. Like most people, I started out playing this game on original mode. Just learning the mechanics of the game, just getting through it and learning a few patterns. Learning the size of your hitbox and what you can get away with, and from there that's when I started increasing the difficulty. But the game does have a really useful training mode in it, so you can start on any level or any boss and just learn how to handle it. I've probably spent more time in the game's training mode than I have actually playing through the game itself, just trying to learn as much as possible. I was really struggling with the first boss in this game until I started using the training mode, trying different things over and over until I eventually got it. This gives you a good idea of how small your hitbox actually is. It's only a couple of pixels across. Some of these shots target you, so you've just got to sidestep a couple of pixels at a time to avoid the first attack. With the next attack, drop a bomb as soon as it looks like it's going to hit you. That'll put your shield up to allow you to avoid it, cancel the bullets, and also allow you to get to a safe spot for the next attack. You can position yourself in the centre of the next bullet ring up top. I prefer to hang down the bottom. Just feels slightly safer. But after a couple of bombs and a couple of side steps, I finally won. And with no lives lost as well. Now I very carefully edited out loads of deaths I had early on playing this game. When you progress to the Ultra Mode level of difficulty, that is where the game comes alive. Now I grew up playing shoot 'em ups in the 80s and 90s, R-Type, Super LS, loads of games like that. Really enjoyed them, but this one, it's just something different for me. I think because on that absolute top level of difficulty in Ultra Mode, once you start playing and you dodge enemy attacks for 10-15 seconds, you just feel like a gaming god. There's no other way to put it. And this game just keeps me coming back. And whilst I have played other games of this type, this one is number one for me. This is the absolute one I recommend you go out and buy. This game has some absolutely incredible bosses, ones that you're going to have to learn all the patterns for. Now this game holds one final surprise, and that is the true last boss, the absolute toughest boss in the game. I actually featured this boss in my Toughest Bosses episode, and I think it was that sort of pushed me to give it a try, really try and learn it and spend some time. And whilst I can beat this boss in single player mode, that's only really by putting extra credits in. I wanted to do it properly, in the training mode, with just 1 credit. That's 3 lives. Let's take a look. So what is it about this last boss that makes it so difficult? Along with having absolutely ridiculously difficult bullet patterns, this one's got a really nasty ability on it. Anytime you die, or anytime you use a bomb to clear the screen of bullets, it's going to put this shield up. And anytime you hit this shield, it's going to give you an absolute barrage of bullets that are really almost impossible to avoid. If you had a tool assisted speedrun of this game, it's probably possible then, but I don't think a human could avoid this. But hey, that's why I love gaming. You might well find out a year down the line there is a human that can counter this. Not me though. Later revisions of this game did tone this down a bit, so the barrage attack, it doesn't wave around as much, so you've got a little bit more chance to avoid it. But we're playing the OG version, the OG Ultra version. And whilst I cannot get this guy down in 3 lives, I cannot quite do it. I'm really happy with how my run progressed. Now I got this run after 8 or 10 hours just trying this boss over and over again. It really is that difficult. To start out with, you've got to make really small movements, otherwise the bullet spread will follow you around the screen and trap you in the corner. This is followed by the good pattern and the bad pattern. The bad pattern is the curvy one you've got to curve your way out of, and it's really difficult. And I get that bad pattern twice in a row and I have to bomb. That clears the screen of bullets and puts the shield up, but don't attack the shield, remember. So it seems like we're not off to a very good start. I'm already down 1 bomb. The next couple of patterns are absolutely nuts. You've got to move 1 pixel at a time. If you move too fast, you're going to get hit by another bullet. Now all the patterns are stupidly difficult, but I found this one really tough. The way the bullets sort of flicker on the screen, it just makes them absolutely crazy to avoid. Eventually I got this one though. Stay at the bottom of the screen and just go over the bullets until you reach the outside edge. When you get to the outside edge, release a bomb. This starts the original patterns all over again, and this time I take my first death, and it is on that curvy pattern. It just comes out so fast I don't really have any chance to avoid it. That's 2 lives left. Again, the shield's up, don't attack, otherwise you'll get the barrage. On to the next phase, and we want to get as close as possible to do as much damage as we can. This next pattern's actually not too bad. There's always going to be space for you to avoid at the bottom of the screen. Unfortunately, this one's now made of 2 patterns. There's the top pattern and the bottom pattern that goes underneath, and it's that bottom pattern that is really tricky to avoid. So we have to use a bomb to buy us a couple of seconds. And this is the final pattern. This is the end. This is the pattern that was thought impossible. There's hardly any gaps to avoid, and anytime you use a bomb you're going to get that barrage back on you with the shield. This is as far as I can get. I cannot do this last pattern. I think I'm going to try and find some way to get sort of save states on the arcade version and just practice it over and over, just see if I can possibly do it. but that was 10 hours of practice and play in a single run just to get to this point. I don't know if I'll ever get this one down in 1 credit, but it's nice to dream. Other bullet hell shooters are available though, and without doubt the best one to start with is Deathsmiles. This originally saw an Xbox 360 release, however there is a new up-to-date Deathsmiles 1 and 2 combo pack. If you're looking at getting into these games, you'd be absolutely crazy to pass this up. 2 games on 1 cartridge. And as I say, this is the game to start with. Pay no attention to the artwork, I promise it's not going to get you on some government watch list. Let's take a look at the game. So it's definitely not just myself that recommends this game to start out with, loads of people do. And there's got to be a reason for that, and I think it's because this game is so approachable. It's a lot easier than some of the other games. It's also a horizontally scrolling game, so it feels like you've got a bit more space to work with. This is the game on the max level of difficulty, and as you can see, it's perfectly manageable. There is however another version of this game, Mega Black Label. Now that is not like this, it's the same game but unbelievably more difficult. So definitely start with the base game. So unlike Mushihimesama, you're actually attacked from both sides in this game. So your Xbox 360 controller triggers give you rapid fire in either direction. But there's also the usual things like focus fire and bombs. And kinda like R-Type back in the 1980s, each of the player has their own familiar, and you can use this to block certain bullet types and shoot in different directions. There's different weapon types for each of the players you choose to play as, so try them all, find one that fits for you. For me, it's Follette, she's absolutely awesome. Her bullet attacks aren't as wide as the other players, but she's got awesome focus fire which makes taking down bosses a lot faster. I think some of the enemy bullet attacks in this game are also a little bit fairer, a little bit slower, a lot more manageable. If you play this game on normal difficulty, I would not be surprised if you finished it on your first credit. But that's kind of the training mode if you like, just getting used to the game, getting used to the controls and the mechanics. Even on the top level of difficulty, it probably only takes me 3 credits to get through the game, and I'm definitely not an expert player at this one. There are plenty of bosses in this game, and you can use that training mode to learn them as well. Another thing that makes this game a little bit easier than some of the others is you can actually take multiple hits per life. But it's that training mode that's absolutely invaluable. It allows you to play the bosses over and over again. So all these patterns, you're going to learn them in time. But compared to Mushihimesama patterns, I think these are a lot easier. A lot of the time you'll get shot at and you'll see an opening and you'll be able to get through. It's not like you've got to learn absolutely everything like the other games. And I think for that reason, that's why it's gained this reputation as the beginner's bullet hell game. This was probably my 4th ever time through the game, and I did this boss without getting hit once. So it really is an approachable game, this one. This physical double pack of the game, you can probably pick it up right now for about £20, and that's an absolute bargain. Just like Mushihimesama, the game's got that same thing where you've got a really small hitbox. That heart on the main character, that's what's got to avoid getting hit. But it is that little icon, that little heart, that you can use to see where your hitbox is, really pilot it carefully around these bullet showers. So when I first saw these types of games, I was really unsure about them. I thought they looked absolutely incredible, but I just thought they'd be a bit too difficult to play, and I didn't really play shoot 'em ups anymore. I kind of moved on to other games, first person shooters, strategy games, that kind of thing. But I saw one of these games in the sale one day and I thought I'd give it a go, and I was absolutely hooked. You find yourself improving, playing these training modes over and over, getting a little bit better each time. And the next minute you know, you're on YouTube watching endless videos of other people taking out some of these bosses, trying to learn the way some of them handle the bosses and mixing it with tactics of your own. So that was the first of the Deathsmiles games, an absolutely brilliant introduction to the series and a great introduction to bullet hell shooters as well. You can start off fairly easy and manageable and work your way up to the tougher levels. But what of the second game? There were 2 games included in this pack. And it was Deathsmiles 2 that I bought the double pack for. I had Deathsmiles already on Nintendo Switch and PC, so really enjoying the first game, I thought I'd try the second one as well. When Deathsmiles 2 was first released, it didn't have the best reputation. I think that was because of the movement away from pixel art to 3D rendered backgrounds, and it certainly has a different style to it. And I kind of include myself in that. The first time I played this, I didn't think it looked anywhere near as good as the first game. However, one big benefit of this game is it is a true widescreen game. Gone are the 4:3 aspect ratios of the original games. This is true widescreen, and it's really nice to have that extra space to move around in. So this game does have a bit of a Christmas theme to it. You're trying to take on the evil enemy Satan Claus. He's stolen some magical wishing notes, and yeah, the story's kind of dumb. But we're here for the bullets, the shooting and the gameplay. And this game does have it. I played it through a couple of times and I like it more each time I play this one. I'd say difficulty wise the game's pretty much on par with the first game. You've got a few more characters to select this time, but same advice as before, just pick Follette. She's that much better than the other characters, at least it's the one that clicks with me. There's some great bosses in this game, along with some great bullet patterns, but they're all really manageable. There's a few different routes you can take through the game, so you don't have to play the same maps over and over again. There is different orders you can do things, and if you find one particular level too hard, you can lower the difficulty just for that one level. Like the first game, you have your familiar again, and you're going to be using this to dodge and avoid and shield yourself against bullets pretty much all the way through the game. So while there's a lot going on in the later levels, definitely more of a challenge and a lot more bullets, there was one surprise for me, and you cannot tell me this is not modelled after a particular member of the UK British royal family. I mean, it's just got to be, isn't it? I mean, it just looks so much like him, it can't not be him. And I love what's got to be a dodgy English translation. Nice older man. But the Duke of Sussex has got some really tight attacks to avoid on this fight. Like the first game, there's a great training mode, so always suggest you play through that as well. Really helps you learn the game. This boss also reminds me of the film Labyrinth. Remember the character Ludo in that? I think it's just the noises he makes, but it really made me laugh when I made that association. You're trying to work out what you know that sound from, and then you nail it down. So like the first game, this one has got some really complex patterns in it, but they're all really manageable. And some of them, the first time you'll see them, you'll dodge them first time. You won't need to sort of work out where you're going to go and where you're going to hide. They come out slow enough that you can avoid them. Well, maybe with a bit of practice. One of the optional levels is the fairground level, and this is a lot more difficult from the other ones, but again, completely up to you if you want to do this one or not. It's a really good challenge, this one though, and the reason I play this one is it's got an awesome boss at the end. Now, being an optional level and a bit tougher than the others, the boss at the end of it is also a bit tougher than some of the others. I can get through it, I've just got to burn a couple of credits, but a bit of practice required on this one, I think. But I think this whole game's a little undeserving of that bad rap it got when it was released. Yeah, the graphical style is different, it's not all pixel art anymore and pixel art backgrounds, you've kind of got to evolve with the times a little bit. But I think it holds up well enough. But what of the end game boss, Satan Claus himself? Well, right at the end of the game, after a load of different levels, optional ones and ones you have to play through, you get to the final boss. And just like before, without any practice, somehow I was doing really well on this one. I didn't get hit for ages, I managed to get through a bunch of patterns without taking any damage at all. I thought I had this one absolutely sorted. Unfortunately for me, as is the case with a lot of these bullet hell shooters, the last boss usually has more than one form. And whilst I was doing well on the first one, the second one was an absolute pain. Some of these patterns are so difficult to avoid. I'm sure if you practice it enough you'd be able to work it out, but I don't think this is the one you're going to be dodging first time. But like I say, I do enjoy Deathsmiles too. It's absolutely undeserving of its bad reputation. I think it's a great little game, this one. To get both Deathsmiles games for 20 quid is an absolute bargain. Definitely worth picking up. But we've looked at 3 games so far, and they're all games that I have quite a lot of experience with, so I am skilled to some degree. I'm definitely not a pro player, but let's finish this up looking at one game that's going to hand me my ass. Yeah, Mushihimesama got a sequel, Mushihimesama Futari, or Bug Princess Duo. This came out in 2006. I think this only got a release in Japan on PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360. However, if you import it, it is region free, so it will play on a UK Xbox 360. But be careful, it will not play on Xbox One with backwards compatibility or the Xbox Series X. But this is a game that's absolutely worth picking up, and I've no doubt it's going to get a digital release not too far in the future. I would say this is not a beginner's bullet hell shooter though, this one. Even on original level difficulty, it is pretty damn hard, this one. I thought the first game was hard until I sort of learned a few bits and pieces, but this one though, I would say it's a step up. But just exactly how difficult is difficult? Well, let's take a look at the first boss with difficulty on Original, Maniac mode and Ultra mode. So this is Original mode, standard difficulty, the lowest level of difficulty and the default as you start the game. It's a very similar game to the first one. You've got a couple of different characters you can choose this time though, different weapons, and they're both good at different things. You've got your bombs as usual, and you've got your little options to shoot enemies on the outskirts. But Original mode, you can see it's not too bad. This is the first boss, bear in mind, but everything's perfectly manageable here. Bullets are slow enough that you can avoid, and there's plenty of spaces between them. But let's check it out when we put the difficulty up to Maniac. You can see you get a big increase in difficulty here. You get far more attacks, enemy bullets are faster, and you have less space between the bullets to avoid and dodge things. You definitely don't want to start the game in this mode. Play it on Original mode and learn as much as you can about the game. Some of the best pro players in this game have played this game for literally months to learn and figure out these patterns. It's not something you're going to do on your first go, at all. But remember, this is only middle difficulty. So as you can see, on Ultra mode, this mode is absolutely nuts. There's even more bullets, even faster bullets, and they're far more dense than they were in other levels. To beat any of this game's bosses on this level of difficulty, you're going to have to learn them. There's no other way around it. Unlike Deathsmiles, where you can kind of cheese some of the bosses, get through them first time, you're not going to have a hope of doing that here. So you got to wonder, what killed me there? Was it the flying rocks, was it the screen full of bullets, or was it the three-way dragon fire? There's so much going on you can barely tell. So when you start the game on Ultra mode, it does actually give you a warning. Big red screen flashes up with a disclaimer basically saying, are you sure you want to get your ass kicked? Because this was an arcade release. Basically saying, do you want to lose your money? Yes or no? When you agree, you can choose your character. You can play as Rekko from the first game, who's got a really nice wide shot, really good bombs as well, and kind of good at everything, I would say. Or you can play as Palm. Now Palm is my preferred character in this one, does a little bit more damage, and I feel the slower movement when you want to be really tight in some of these gaps is just a little bit easier. You can also choose normal or abnormal shot type. It's just a different pattern of bullets, but experiment and choose the one that suits you best. But here we are on level 1, and you can see the game wastes no time at all in throwing as many bullets at you as it possibly can. I think pretty much the only reason I'm surviving here at all to begin with is luck and bombs. And you also haven't picked up any power-ups in the game at the moment, so you're at the weakest you can possibly be. But just like the first game, this one has got an excellent training mode, so you can really practice specific bits of the game. And I started out with some of the bosses in this game, and I got the 4th boss down. That was my first one that I got down. I did it in 1 credit, no lives lost. So this is the arcade mode, so we don't get the nice graphical filtering of the Xbox 360 mode, so that's why it looks a little bit different. Some of these first attacks look quite difficult, and they kind of are, but all you've got to do is sidestep just 1 or 2 pixels either way and you'll avoid them. Some of them have a little bullet at the end that you've got to sidestep out of the way as well, but with a bit of practice you'll manage it. With the next attack, find the little gap at the bottom where you won't get hit and just move vertically so the next attack doesn't get you either. If you position yourself right, the one after won't hit you. This next pattern isn't random, it's always the same, and I wish I'd known that when I started practicing this one. It just didn't click with me at the time, so lots of avoiding and just pure luck on this one. I do cheap out and use a bomb on this next attack, and one thing that I found really was hard to get to grips with initially on this game was vertical movement. Vertically moving is sometimes better than horizontal, just to avoid the bullets and avoid getting pinned in the corner. After this, I think you're supposed to position yourself near the top of the screen before these patterns overlap and you can't get out. But hey, it was my first time doing it, I was happy just to beat this boss. Thankfully the next attack isn't too bad, it's nice and slow so you can easily move around and avoid it. Finally got this boss down. Like the first Mushihimesama game, this one has got bullet cancels as well. Target certain enemies or certain structures, certain things on the map, destroy them and it will take out all enemies on the screen and all the enemy bullets. And it's learning where they are, learning what targets to prioritise that you've really got to spend time learning on this one. I'm definitely a lot more skilled at the first game than I am at this one, and I find swapping between the two really quite difficult. The size of your hitbox, it just feels different what you can sort of get away with. It's probably exactly the same size as the old game, but I don't know, it just feels different. You know, what you can get away with, how close you can get to enemy bullets. So playing these types of games, what is the attraction? Well, it is the difficulty, which is kind of an odd thing, but it's your progression through it, how well you manage to sort of learn this stuff. You know, level 1 might have absolutely kicked your ass when you first played this game, but the first time you play it, go through it, beat the boss on 1 credit, it's just such a massive step forward. So although I haven't played this game until really relatively recently, Mushihimesama Futari was probably the first bullet hell shooter game that I saw on YouTube. I think there was a video on top 10 challenging games or something like that, or I don't know, something like that, one of these top 10 things on YouTube, and I just watched it and I was just fascinated and I just kept watching different videos of this game. But what made the biggest impression seeing this game for the first time for me was the end game boss. It was just absolute insanity. I don't even think to this day a human has managed to do it in 1 credit without using bombs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think that's the case. But that was the challenge mentioned at the start of this video. I'm going to have a good crack at this boss. I've probably played it through about 10 different attempts or so at this one. Let's see how I do. So this one starts out absolutely crazy. Even some of the best players in the world use bombs on these first few attacks. It's really difficult not to get trapped in a corner. I'm just spamming bullets and just using bombs over and over again, just to buy a little bit of time. I'll play a bit of Rekko and Palm in this fight just to show you how different the attacks are. I do think Palm is slightly better at this fight, just seems to do a bit more damage a bit quicker, and that is necessary. So there's so many different patterns to this fight, so much you're going to have to learn. On the first game, remember I said that first fight took me about 8 hours to get through. This one is going to take you a lot longer, there's so much more to learn. I'm barely scratching the surface with this boss with what I've learned. The first time you do this boss, you're probably going to take 30 to 90 lives to get through it, it's that tricky. And as I say, I don't think there's a player on the planet who has got through this boss on Ultra Mode without losing a life, without using a bomb. I don't believe it's been done. When it does get done, and it will, these things always happen. Same with the first game, someone no missed, no bombed that fight. It is going to happen with this one. I don't think it's going to happen for a while, I don't think it's going to happen for a long time, but whoever does it, they're going to have really earned that achievement. This next pattern is probably the only one in the entire fight that I've got a little bit of confidence in. I can kind of do this one. I have managed to get through it on a separate playthrough without using a bomb, but in this one I do have to. And I get very lucky here not to get clipped and die. It's not the stuff coming at you that's so tricky to avoid, it's the fact that the walls of each of these kind of diamonds sort of fluctuates, and it's getting hit by that seems to catch me out the most. This pattern can also kind of glitch out if you die as well. Sometimes the bullets don't reset and you'll find yourself in an unavoidable situation. The only way around it is to drop a bomb, lose a bomb and reset the pattern. But some of these dodges are just so tight, it's so difficult that a lot of time it's just luck. There's a few more really tight bullet dodges, but these can be done. We'll swap over to Palm for the rest of the fight. Now a lot of this looks absolutely impossible, but it is all avoidable. The mistake I'm making here is hanging out down near the bottom of the screen. This gives these attacks more time to fan out. What you need to do is go right near the top of the screen where they generate and misdirect them. Make sure they fire at you and just dodge around them. After these few attacks you go on to the next phase of the fight. This is the Dragon's Tail, and here the bullets are so close together it's so difficult to avoid that you can probably do it with just a pixel to spare. But after this next one I got a surprise one that I hadn't seen before, and it's absolutely crazy. You try avoiding this one. But I don't remember getting this attack in any of the other fights that I played through, so it goes to show that the patterns are not fixed as well, so they are random. So you're not just going to learn one playthrough and one way through this, you're going to have to learn the different patterns as well, and you might not always get that pattern. But she's almost down now. However, if you make it through this point in the game in Ultra Mode and you defeat the boss, that's it, she's dead. If you manage to get through this point in the game on 1 credit and get to this fight, the fight is not over. Yet, as is kind of tradition with these games, particularly ones made by Cave, there is a second form. And there's a few changes at this point in the fight. You can use your bombs still, but they now no longer do any damage whatsoever. And also when you do use them, the boss is going to put up a shield and you won't be doing any damage, even with your regular bullets. When I've gone through this fight before, I kind of averaged 12 to 14 minutes. So I'm not going to show you the whole fight, I am going to kind of cut through it and just see different patterns and stuff. But it just gives you an idea how long and how difficult this fight is. We do move on to one of the easier patterns, however I still get clipped at this point. You've got to sort of move back, give yourself enough room to fit through these bullets. If you think this game looks kind of interesting, I'm going to link to another video in the video description. This is from Awesome Games Done Quick, a charity gaming event from 2020. The player Gusto manages to beat the entire game on 1 credit, obviously using lives and obviously using bombs, and that includes this end boss. But it's the description of the fight and the crowd and the chat, the explanation of what he's doing and why he's doing it and when he's doing it, that just gives you a better insight to this game than I ever could. So make sure you give that a watch as well. So we move on to another pattern, and it's always the kind of lasers that hit you from the side that get me on this one. Other than that, this pattern isn't too bad. I can kind of handle this one. Unfortunately, we move on to another one, and this one is known as the tunnel, I believe, or turbo tunnel. And the way to avoid it is just to kind of move vertically, but there's only so much vertical space you've got, and you can only move horizontally so much to avoid these bullets coming down at the side. So that's more lives lost. After this we move on to an absolutely incredible pattern that I can't think is anything other than a fail condition. I think you get this pattern if you don't kill this boss fast enough. From what I've seen with the best players in the world playing this game, they just try and kill the boss fast enough that this pattern doesn't even happen. You can actually avoid it, but it is pixel perfect, this one. You've got overlapping bullets, so the gaps are just so ridiculously tight, you're basically just going to die and die over and over. But finally she's almost dead. Unfortunately she's not. Of course there's a third form, there's a third and final form of this boss, just in case those last two weren't tricky enough. At this point though, she's only got 1 attack left. Unfortunately it's a really difficult one. You've got bullets sweeping in from the left, sweeping in from the right, and descending on you as well. Even some of the professional players are going to die on this pattern. It's just so difficult, avoiding the overlap, trying to find your routes through the bullets, and still bombs don't do anything at this point. Basically they're used just to clear the bullets, just to buy a couple of seconds. And you'll be using bombs so regularly and dying so fast over and over again. Oh yeah, when you die the shield goes up as well. So don't die, don't use bombs, because that shield's going to be up and you're not going to be doing any damage. But whilst this pattern is absolutely nuts, I still don't think it's as bad as the one in the first game. That unavoidable attack, I still think this is a little bit easier. The whole fight I would say is a lot more difficult, but this one attack is a little bit more straightforward than that. At least you got a few seconds to do a little bit of damage. Stick with it though and you'll finally beat one of the hardest video game bosses ever made. So hopefully I've inspired you to maybe take a look at this type of game. Maybe it's something you've never played before. I was exactly the same. I'd never played one of these games. I played it, I got the bug, and I absolutely love it. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of these games in the future. But for now, remember to buy the Deathsmiles 1 and 2 pack. Check out Gusto's video below. But that's it for now. Take it easy and I'll see you next time.